What is up, people? Welcome, episode 2. That's right, episode 2 of Unfiltered. Away we go. The Unfiltered band. If you weren't here for episode 1, they only play like 2 or 3 tracks, so go easy on them. There they go. You can't even see them. They're invisible. Okay, that's enough. Welcome to the podcast. We are Unfiltered. If you want to hit me up on anything as far as topics are concerned, ideas you have, answers. We did a list last week. You want to complain about it, hit me up on Twitter at Casey Stern. You can get us on YouTube at Bleav's channel or mine as well. A lot to talk about today. We got a couple of pods coming up here in the next couple of days. So as far as the holiday weekend, it'll be a holiday here for a lot of you, but not for all of the cast here at Unfiltered. Today, we're going to talk about a few different things, but one of, in a lot of different baseball kind of, if you will, going around the horn scenarios on where we're at as we take the litmus test on, if you will, the first semester here of our season. But there's a lot of different things that you learn in sports are even weirder than they are for just us normal people with actually no athletic ability whatsoever. One of those, and we are Bleav, right? So this is fitting that it's going to be about this, but one of those relates to superstitions. Superstitions in baseball are bizarre. I talked about it a little bit in the last pod, in the first episode, when we discussed the no-hitters, right? Like the idea of how dumb it is that anybody would think that because I'm sitting here and tweeting out to you, let's say that there's a no-hitter, right, after 5 innings, that in the 6th inning, if there's a hit, it's because I did it, and I'm the idiot, right? I'm the guy who screwed up. It has nothing to do with me, clearly. We understand that, like, when we're rational. People have superstitions, right? You know, this is my lucky shirt. This is my lucky hat. You know, we all have a lot of performers, right, that are singers, have, like, different things that they do beforehand, and actors, and, you know, they get into their role, right? This is just how I kind of do it. And athletes take all of that to, like, a whole nother level. But it is fair and good that I happen to have a beard here because I didn't realize that maybe everything about success is related to facial hair. You know, clearly that hasn't been the case for the Yankees, right? They're never allowed to have any, and they've won plenty. Just ask all the kids who are like 6 years old and wearing all the, 26, 27, 28, looking for, like, I don't know how many rings they're going to be waiting for. A while, perhaps, although this season it's gone so well. But we always talk about, all these different superstitions that we have. The beard scenario with the Red Sox and my guy, Alex Cora, who I've known for a very, very long time. So for those who don't know the story, they came in, they played terribly. Everything was going wrong. They started, I think it was 10-19, right? He came in and I didn't even realize, I mean, I know his age, but if AC is listening, like, I don't ever think of him as old. I mean, he looked old. I mean, it really aged him. I forget about my 2 white hairs I've been picking out in a beard. Dude was just, I mean, he was sporting it big time, right? So the team was stinking up the joint, and he, look, it's like, it's one of these things I pause because if they had, instead of going 10-4 after what I'm about to talk about, they had gone like, 4-10, then it's like, what are you going to do after that? Like, we never discussed what happens if the superstition doesn't work. Because, he came in and he said, okay, I realize we're not playing well. And the quote was, I should have done this a long time ago, and shaved his beard and went clean shaven again. Okay. And they're 10-4 since. They've been playing great baseball and everything is wonderful, right? Everybody is, it's, whether it's the rally sticks, right? For, you got, rally squirrels, the thunder sticks, you got rally squirrels, you got all kinds of different things that we start to kind of get into, right? And say, okay, this is why, right? Throw an octopus on the ice, whatever it might be. I mean, these are the reasons that we're winning as a team. And I think most of us take it in jest. Athletes do not. Like, this is real for them, okay? I don't know how many players are listening to this right now and are wearing the same underwear from like 14 days ago. It's scary, some of these weird things that, what was it, eating chicken every day, right, for Wade Boggs. I mean, Turk Wendell, who was just a gem in his own right. Former Met, who used to jump over, every line and wouldn't touch any. I don't know. I mean, I don't even remember the story of like the first time, like what happened. He got electrocuted when I have no idea. So Alex Cora shaves, and now they're 10-4. So now it's working out. I'm curious if any of you have any weird superstitions that you believe in, because, and get me on Twitter at Casey Stern. This gets me to a couple of things. One, My favorite sports movie, again, going back to Bleav, right? Because it's fitting. My favorite sports movie of all time has always been The Natural, always. And the whole story of that, even though we all know about knocking the lights out and, Roy Hobbs, right? And all of that and how good Robert Redford was. The bat, the symbol, it's not the bat, it's believing in yourself, right? I think of a bat, my favorite movie. And anybody who knew me in my high school, teenage years, I used to have a bat and carry it around and swing it around my room, not at things, but I would literally just walk around with a bat because Tom Cruise, Daniel Kaffee in A Few Good Men, he used to say, I can't think without my bat. And he would walk around with the bat, and all of a sudden, then there was like a great idea that came. Like, if it was that easy, do you know how many of us would have whatever your level of success is be that much higher, right? And even higher than that? It's not that simple. That's why I always say, what happens if it doesn't work? Well, you try something else. And then, oh, that was what it is. I know. I had to wear blue every day. Then all of a sudden, everything's going to be spectacular, right? It doesn't work out that way. But it makes me think of, and in covering the Red Sox, they're certainly fitting. And I'll lead in this way with the superstitions. The fan bases who are fans of teams that have sucked up the joint for a long time, right? And have lost in big spots and have failed in every miserable manner you could possibly imagine. The fans of those teams believe that no matter what is going on, it's going to get worse, right? So they don't have superstitions that go right because nothing's ever gone right for them. So the way they look at it is they're always looking to find something new. And if something starts to go well, they get so surprised. We can't, no, you understand. I haven't gone to the bathroom in 7 hours, but I'm not moving from this spot at the bar. I'm not leaving. Makes me think of like those idiots. I grew up in New York and I'm proud of this. I have never been in that soiree down, what is it, in 7th Avenue, right? Where they have the ball drop for New Year's Eve. I've never done that, even being there. Only people who don't live there want to do that, right? The people who even live in the area can't wait to get out. A part of it because they're renting out their rooms, I'm sure, right? So people could watch it. I get it if you're like having a hotel suite and having a party and watching it down. The idea of I'm going to go sit there and freeze my butt off for 10 hours, literally, before I start to look at Ryan Seacrest and Jenny McCarthy or whoever and watch these bands. I can't get a drink, like I can't go anywhere. Like, what have I brought? Like some chips, maybe a peanuts and cracker jacks, right? Maybe get those. Like, the idea that's crazy, but people are superstitious as fans. Like, I will not move from this spot. This is my seat. This is where I watch the game. I think of in another great movie, Silver Linings Playbook, right? With De Niro, with the Eagles. Like, I have to wear this. I have to do it this way. Red Sox fans, I remember being at the Cask and Flagon and sitting there because my job, part of it during covering the series in 2004 when they came back, was to kind of get the fans. We did a piece called The Voice of the Nation, Red Sox Nation. Now everyone's got a nation and a universe. I mean, really get over it, people. But we used to, it's like, Mr. Red, excuse me, Mr. Med is here. Don't put on a mustache and go be like a different team. That's why they started off so poorly. When you sit there and you look at a Red Sox fan, they were so pained that I can tell you, because I was there, when they were down 10-3 or up 10-3 after Damon hit, I think it was a grand slam, right, off Javi Vasquez. There were fans, I mean it, who, when someone would go to high five, and I was sitting right there, somebody would go to high five, they would not high five the people back. Like, you don't understand. If I high five you back and we accept that we're winning, then we're going to lose immediately. It's going to be terrible. It brings me to life as a Met fan because a lot of you don't know me. People who do and who listen to me for years on radio have already understood my pain that I've experienced throughout the entirety of my life when I made the decision, which was not a smart one, that instead of following suit with the Yankee fans that are in my family, and they're all Yankee fans, okay? I was named after Casey Stengel. I was not named after Casey Stengel, the Mets manager, okay? My first dog's name, who I love to death, Mickey, named after Mickey Mantle, okay? Everything was all of that, all right? There was 37, like, was everywhere, right? Casey Stengel, okay? So the decision I made to rebel at like 5 years old, right, was not a smart one. All right. It was like temporarily smart Islander fan. And then, oh, wait, you're going to have to wait and lose for like the rest of your life now. We start with the Stanley Cup. We go backwards. But the decision I made has brought me a lot of pain, some joy, some. It's there. So I don't remember any of it. I've been hypnotized by therapists to forget it, but it's there somewhere. But being a Met fan is like, what do they say? Lead a horse to water, right? It's like being, drawn after, time in a desert to like a giant pool, and like you're like salivating. You almost want to drink it, not even swim in it, right? You jump in a pool and hit the cement and realize there's actually no water here. I mean, that is legitimately what it's like. So the superstitions, they don't exist. The only thing that you're superstitious about is how much more time do I have to be happy before it's going to be a nightmare? But I feel differently about this team. I have to be totally fair. And I always will be kind of down the middle, even about that team, right? I'm usually harder on them than I should be, actually. Maybe that's part of the superstition. If I hate them, then it'll all work out. But as a Met fan, you realize the difference. I mentioned the Islanders before, but a lot of people who are watching and listening to this are fans of teams who you have seen the franchise change when the management changes. We've seen that all the time in sports, right? I think about when Dick Vermeil took over the Rams, right? What happened with them? Jim Leland took over and this is not against like the people before them. It is what it is. Yeah, Jim Leland took over the Tigers. I talk about this often for years on the radio, but when Jim Leland took over the Tigers, they had been losing for so long, and this was definitely calculated. It was not like by accident that he did this, but they had been losing for so long a period of time that it was, and you could check, I think it was like 2 weeks into the season. They were, I don't even know if they were like 4-4. It was really early in the year, okay? And they lost the game, and he went nuts, like throwing tables, screaming at the media, like, and part of it, if you go back to the diatribe that's in there, is we are not going to accept losing anymore. This is not who we're going to be anymore. So the players who are here and the fans who are watching who are like, oh, this is another day. This ain't going to be another day. This is not who we're going to be moving forward. And I'll never forget that, because if you think about, and I know, look, Verlander ran into Pujols. Like, they had their issues, right, when they got there. We had, the PFP situation, which is something people hate when they get to spring training, but cost them big time in a World Series that, in my opinion, may be the worst of all time. It was incredibly boring. And the travel, as a media member, really complaining. It was just, it doesn't seem like it's far away. It was, anybody who's watching, oh yeah, it was a pain in the neck. But in 2006, also, I'm a little bitter because I had to watch Yadier Molina, Aaron Heilman just a little bit before that. But if you think back to what he did, it changed, that changed everything. Barry Trotz, who, like, it's right, only the Islanders. Oh, no, he's not good enough. I don't care how slow it's going. We're slowly winning. Like, what do you mean slowly winning? Like, hey, I'm going to go to the roulette table, right? So here's the deal. You could lose really fast, or you could win really slow. And I guarantee you're going to win. Like, this is always a winning number, this Barry Trotz thing, right? And, people are going to be like, I don't like you at the table. Okay, fine. You're not like, I don't like the way you play. Okay. But you're going to win. Like, it's going to be slow and trotting. And people are going to yell at you, and you're going to win. Who doesn't take that? I'll win. Can we win, please? Right? But it's a change. Not only the ownership, and a lot of people talk about Steve Cohen, right? And all the money and putting it behind, all the things he said, which is certainly right there in front of you with the Cano situation, all the money that they ate, right? But if you think about Buck Showalter, and you think about what he has done for this team, Buck Showalter has brought an aura that has brought calm. Now, I know he hasn't won a World Series, but this is a guy who's won a lot of games in his career, right? Very well respected. And anybody will tell you, there were some wear out your welcomes in terms of how much power, he would have in whether it's Texas and Baltimore and with GMs and owners and different things. But this is a guy whose IQ and game managing is like, it's if it's not 1-1, he's right there. Like, if that category was up there, right, and you were doing all like the ratings, like the Madden ratings, the Madden rating would be like a 99 for that. But what he has brought, and this is nothing against, and I happen to think, Luis Ross is a really nice guy. They've had, the Callaway situation, notwithstanding. I love Terry Collins, and I think he, got a bad rap after he really did adjust from his time as a manager the time before, the stint before, and did a really good job with the Mets overall. But what Buck Showalter has brought is what every fan that's listening and every player listening wants, that stability, right? It's the Doc Rivers thing that we've seen with Frank. I mean, there are many of these, right? That's why Bill Parcells would have a job like, with a new team anytime he wanted to, because they thought, okay, he'll turn it around, right? Like we used to get away with everything, but now the inmate's not running the asylum anymore. Like, boom, we're going to fix this thing. That's the way Buck Showalter has presented himself and been this entire time. But it's been with levity. It's been because he's not taking things seriously. Because the problem with the Mets has been the way they've been managed and the way they're run. It is always like the house is on fire. It is always like we need to panic. Anybody will tell you the greatest thing we all over managers in general and coaches. I don't want you to get mad at me. You get them all wrong. Like, you overrate things you shouldn't. You underrate things you shouldn't. Okay? Let's start with like the overrate. Okay? Here's one of my favorite things that I ever hear about coaches and managers over the years. I take some water. One of the things I always have loved is the idea, okay, which is fascinating to me. So think about this. The idea that, and I guarantee you have said this about your team. There's no doubt. Okay? He doesn't know how to get the guys up for the game. You know what? The team's not motivated. That you see what they do there? They look like they don't care. First of all, no one looks like they care, like at least not positively, when they're losing. Okay? Like no one looks, it doesn't matter what you're losing, okay? Someone broke up with you, like you don't look like, oh, like I'm really motivated now to go win a game, okay? Your car just got repossessed, it's pulling out of the driveway. Can't wait for tonight. Like, it's not that way, right? So you have to, like, no one looks good when they're losing. It's the chicken or the egg. What comes first, right? Is it that they're losing because they weren't motivated, or they look this way because they're losing? And it really depends on the team, the person, or whatever the story is. But in what scenario, what walk of life, like anywhere, think about this. People who are successful, and this is for any of you in any industry, right? Anywhere. But the percentage of athletes that get to the big leagues, the big stage, and in this case, baseball, we're talking about the less than 1% of everyone, right? Which is why, it's the Hall of Very Good. Like, look, there are some people like the Harold Bates situation, right? Like there's, because of these committees that shouldn't be in these Hall of Fames, or maybe, they, or whatever. But the Hall of Fame would be like 8 people if the idea was, well, I can't, no, you see, it's ridiculous. I'm not going to have a Mussina or whoever it might be in the Hall of Fame because, he's not Sandy Koufax or Bob Gibson. No, he's not Sandy Koufax or Bob Gibson. But if you had to be Sandy Koufax, Bob Gibson, Ted Williams, or Willie Mays, we'd have 14 people in the Hall of Fame. You already have the 1% of the less than 1%. That's not a lot of percent. Okay? There's not even a milk for that. There's not a lot of percent. That's skim to none. All right? So, I mean, what do you people expect? But getting back to that, right? And think about it. If you are at the point where you are an athlete and you've made it to that level, like this is who you are, right? You don't think you're motivated to do well? Like you think you woke up? Now, you may think our team stinks and not say it out loud. Sure. Okay. You may think we have no chance to beat them, and that's not a good way to think, but you may think that and not say it out loud, I'm sure. But here's the thing about baseball that people get more wrong about coaches and managers than they do even with the other teams, because you could call a bad play, right? Like you think about out of bounds plays in the NBA, right? If you have a coach that doesn't understand what he's doing in the 4 or 5 moments in the whole game, because you got to pick the rotation that you're going to use in a minute, fine. But if you don't understand in the 5 moments I'm asking you to know more than me, right? Because I'm playing the game and we're in a bit of a moment, I need you to be thinking in the chess piece right ahead. If you in those 5 moments are 1 for 5 and are putting us in situations to fail and are miserable, then I got a problem, right? This is your show. This is where you show up and do the thing. All right. Where you do what you got to do. Okay. That's how it works. The idea that a baseball player in a one-on-one game, because look, I'm not saying you're trying to cherry pick stats like a situation with some batting title, scenarios right at the end of the year. But a baseball player, first of all, you can't go a whole year without giving up an at bat because there's gonna be a time that you're down 8-0 and you're like, I've stunk today. And it's not you're saying I'm giving up an at bat, but in talking to players, I mean, who are listening to this, they know that. I mean, you're probably not at your best, and you're gonna, either swing at a slider you shouldn't, or whatever it is with your head down to the dugout. But baseball players, they know their own numbers. They know what they have in terms of their goals at the beginning of the year. They don't go out there and say, you know what, I'm going to strike out 4 times today. You don't have to motivate a baseball player to want to do well because, yeah, they love their teammates and they want to win, but they're going up there and it's one-on-one. And when you're one-on-one in any walk of, no matter what the heck, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You want, and I mean against someone, right? You want to be better than them. You want to win. If you're saying you don't, then you're probably losing. Okay. Like people think it's like you're not allowed. No, you should want to win. It's okay. I don't care if it's like you're fighting your best friend or you're playing like I remember I had a friend who, if he's watching this, I won't name him and lay him out for this. But we used to, when we were like in junior high school, we played like Sega Genesis, right? That's how old I am. And he would do this thing that drove me crazy. If you ever played Street Fighter, the old game, and you probably could do this in any of these, right? If you go ahead and let's say you're on the left side of the screen, right? The other guy's on the right side. And he backs up into the corner or you're hitting him and you get there and you keep kicking his leg and hit the button enough times. Like I guarantee you right now, to some of you who've never done this, you're like, what is he saying? And there are other people who are pulling over on the side of the road to tweet me because this happens all the time. People like this, I really, this is like, there's a room somewhere and I want to put you in it. My friend was like this, and he's still my best friend, but he was like this. And he would just, you can't move. Like, it's not fair. Like, okay, like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, my hands are tied, right? And I remember there was a time I may or may not have thrown his Genesis controller out the window. Not into a window. The window was open. It's okay. I said I was sorry. It hit the porch. It didn't live, and I apologize. I didn't bury it anywhere. But there's sometimes like you get angry and you get frustrated. But when you're one-on-one, you want to beat anybody. It doesn't matter what it is. They're motivated already. They don't need if a player needs motivation to play well, that's the player's problem, not the coach. If the game is called wrong, the lineup should be different. They don't understand the alignment, the defense. That's a different thing. Okay, that's a different thing. Now, there are exceptions to this. I love, my favorite sports story of all time is 1980 Olympic team, Lake Placid. And my favorite item that I have of any kind of sports memorabilia, and I don't have that many, is a signed plaque from the team and the picture of, not to me, but that I bought, like with, Craig and the whole thing with the flag. I mean, I could watch Miracle and just be fine like any night. Like there's like, or you actually have to watch it in the morning because then like you want to do everything, right? It's like why people listen to Rocky when they go and work out. But there are different scenarios. Sure, you want to tell me like, the pep talk, Hunter Pence in a dugout or Hayward in the rain delay or all these other different things. Yeah, there are certain things like that happen. What the coach say at halftime, like we all want to be Gene Hackman and Hoosiers. Like, okay, any given Sunday, right, with Al Pacino. I think of the one in Miracle and the one I always think about, not, so much of, it's our time, but the one where the player is hurt and they've got to get him out there. They need him for the third period and they know he's banged up and he purposely goes in there, Herb Brooks, and basically, tells him that he's being a whip because he knows he needs to find that extra, give me 110%, but he needs to find the 100, right? Because look, let's be honest, we all push hard. 100 is not a place we always go. Sometimes we don't even know what 100 is until that moment where you have to get there. All right. And that's what he had to do. And he had to get him there. So those things happen. But the idea that coaches motivate players and we blame the coaches is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Now, he lost the room, he or she, is a different thing. Let me bring that up. I have seen that. And I'll be fair, bringing one up. Okay. One of those where I've seen that is Matt Williams and the scenario with the Washington Nationals. Okay. And this is not just because I'm a Dusty guy and it changed over that way, but the Washington Nationals, that room he lost them. But a lot of that was in the way that he handled things and communicated and the decision making, right? of some of the things that had occurred. They lost 6 games at the end of a season to a Met team that was at 500 and was terrible because he kept putting Drew Storen out there against Yoenis Cespedes. And I mean, it was like, going up against the boogeyman at the time, and he kept the same thing. Insanity is the same thing over and over again. But you can lose a room. It's mostly because of the way you're handling your players, because you don't understand them. One of the greatest things that's ever been said to me in terms of leadership, and it's funny, I have had GMs that I'm friends with write down and use this quote and have used it and then texted me back that they still use it. But it comes from Leo Mazzoni, and he told me this on the air. I'm going to tell you, it had to be at least 16 years ago. Okay. But the great swaying back in the dugout, and he is a trip. I mean, he is great. But the great pitching coach for the Braves for all those years, Leo Mazzoni, said to me once on the air, and I don't even remember what the question was, but he said the key that he learned to coaching, right, and having success in coaching, and this is for any of you listening about leadership, parenting. I mean, really, I Bleav this goes overarching anywhere, is know where to blow smoke and where to light fire. And I'll say it again because it really is so good. But the key to coaching being knowing where to blow smoke and where to light fire. That is, think about it. Like if your parents, yeah. Think about it, if you're like a child has a parent in the way you get treated, or a player who has a coach, or you are a coach, or you running an office or a dealership or a brokerage or whatever, and you're trying to get people, like, it is totally because everyone's not the same. Everyone is not the same. And a lot of us, it depends on the time. Look, I mean, we're all humans, right? Like, so I've had times in my life where, for the most part, I very much am, and it's not a large category. Straight shooter is the best way to get me, right? Because I, nobody wants to take it, but I can. The other way is the hardest for me, right? But there are times where you need a push and you need that blowing of, hey, pat on the back, you're good. Don't worry about the 0 for 4, right? Here's a moment like this from a teammate. Now, Carlos Beltran, who is now thought about for different reasons, right, with the whole Astros thing. So I'm about to say a nice thing about something with the Astros. Don't get mad at me. But the Carlos Beltran scenario that I bring up is, I love George Springer. This guy, first of all, he's an amazing person. The work that he has done after, having as a, and I don't know the official, as a stutter, right, or a speech impediment, as a dealing with that in his childhood. I mean, I know people that he has like spent time with their kids, not for show, because it's one thing to do it for show. Like, Mookie Betts getting caught. No one even knew. Like after game 2 of a World Series, going outside to give the rest of the spread for the players to the homeless people, like that dude, like, should be loved forever for that. Nobody, he didn't even want to be, no one was supposed to even see that, right? George Springer is a guy who's unbelievable with people and the community and being open about what he went through and all of that. But George Springer, who is one of the best World Series and postseason performers, forget just the last 10, 15 years, the numbers, I mean, those Astro players, right? They're all up on the list now. I know you're mad, but they're all up on the list, okay? George Springer had struck out, I Bleav, 4 times. Here, Bleav. I Bleav 4 times. I think he struck out 4 times in the first game of the World Series. Okay. The next 4 games, he had the best 4-game performance of any hitter we've ever seen in a World Series. Well, is this what I'm about to tell you the reason it happened? No, I'm sure a lot of people have heard this story, but I want to bring it up because it came to my mind as one where it. Oh, there we go. I got muted. Sorry. So the one where you get into a situation where it's the blow smoke and the light fire, right? He goes 0 for 4, and he's sitting down in the dugout after the game, probably feeling down on himself. Carlos Beltran came over. Now, Carlos Beltran is a guy who, and I've talked about this, and I'm going to lead this back into where we started this in a second. But Carlos Beltran is a guy who has been through this, which I'll explain in a different way. But Beltran sat next to George Springer, and I don't, have the quotes in front of me, being honest, exactly what the words were, but basically telling him, hey, just one game. Go out there and have fun. You're fine. It's no big deal. George Springer barely made an out the rest of the World Series. Was the MVP of the World Series. I remember we interviewed him during, it wasn't the next day, but it was not after the series, like during the series, after 1 or 2 of the great games, and he continued them, right? And I remember he said, His words. I asked, what was the change? Now, do I think this is it? No, but I think it's because it relieved him and gave him some peace of mind. And then he was able to believe in himself. And there he went, right? And did it again. But Carlos Beltran told him, hey, you're fine. You're good. And he said that was the reason that he had I mean, literally, he said that was the reason. And Beltran was a fantastic teammate, which, by the way, he adjusted with. He was not a great teammate when I covered him. And he was fine to me, so sorry. But he was not like when I covered him. Okay? But I remember, I'm laughing because, like, I remember years after I covered him, I was covering, like, a Caribbean World Series, and I was down there in Puerto Rico, which I love. And I'm trying to remember where it was. One of these, like, media parties. It was a party at, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember what the name. I can't remember. I think it was the El San Juan, right? I Bleav, the hotel. And I was in the bathroom, and like, you're at the stall, and I'm like, sure, you're looking ahead, your whistle. It's like one of those, like, you don't pay attention, and, like, I looked up. Always, you can always look up. Always look. You can't look down. You could look up. Looked up, and Beltran. It was very weird, but he was always nice to me. But he's not a great teammate then. All right. It's why Billy Wagner had to, after a game that he didn't even have involvement in, have to yell at the media and say, why the hell are you guys talking to me? And was pointing over there. He was one of those over there's that he was being pointed at, right? But he became a great teammate. But think about that. That kind of motivation, it helps because there's moments where you need it. But don't tell me like a season went awry, like the whole year they didn't care. Like, no. But there's moments where it's why when Joe Madden, another guy, fantastic with this. I remember, and the Rays didn't win anything the year I'm going to bring up, but there was a year you can go back and check, and this is legitimate, that he was a regular. Joe's an unbelievable person. I got to know him very, very well personally, and he was really, really kind to me. He is such a super. There's a lot of those, like, I wonder if they're really real. I'm telling you right now, because I'm real. Like, I'm nobody. I just a big mouth, right? Just like you doing this stuff. Joe Madden is. I've sat and been able to sit with him at a dinner table, just talk. He is such a super nice guy. He's an amazing person. But in having him as a regular for years, Joe Madden had a team that was like 18 games under 500. The Rays, I think they were 18 games under, and they were at, like, the All-Star break, and he was like, "Oh, we're going to be over 500 soon." Like, there was no way they were ever going to be over 500, and they were. And they actually, I think, almost made the playoffs or just got in. But he continued. Now, again, going back full circle, what happens if it doesn't work? Well, then he was just wrong, and we forget, right? That's how it goes. But you want to give confidence. Let me go to Beltran for a second. And a sip of water quick. When Carlos Beltran came to the Mets, the first year he was there, he was awful. Okay. I remember the second season that they had him. It was 8 games into the year, and he was getting booed mercilessly. It was like the Met fans decided, okay, you know what? It was year 1. That's fine. Year 2, you got 8 games. We'll give you 8 games to figure it out. But 8 games. And then they now we're going to boo the hell out of you. I mean, look, Derek Jeter got booed by Yankee fans. I think he went 0 for 32 once. I mean, my heavens, right? So Beltran ends up as a Met having an unbelievable career. Like, he was great. He was great for them. The dude was great for them. Everybody thinks about, like, the Wainwright play with the strikeout. Nobody was going to hit that pitch. Yeah, it's like, oh, we should have swung to end this. If you knew it's the end of the season, you go down swinging. Well, what if it was, like, over his head? Like, we use arguments to make arguments. I always love this about people. Like, we find things that, like, no, here. But then what about the other part? I'm sorry, I got to dial tone. I hear the other part, right? Right? Or the article ended at that sentence. But Beltran turned it around and had a great career. And he's a guy who was in Kansas City. I mean, because he had just come off the 8 home runs in the postseason, which is how he got that. And look, BJ Upton had, I think, 8 home runs also. It didn't work out as well. I think Freddie Gonzalez is still trying to put him in the lineup with the Braves. And now it's Melvin, so you can't put it as BJ. But that's not to get on him. I'm just saying. But he ends up getting the big contract, right? He had never been in a moment like that before. He had never experienced anything like that before in Kansas City, and they're unbelievable, okay? And they've got an unbelievable, group of people that run that team and organization. And Swanee, who had retiring, been there like for a million years. So their PR, They don't have that many writers. You go into Kansas City in the middle of a season, you could talk to whoever you want. Okay. You go into New York after that contract, you can't even talk to your own family because you're still at your locker answering questions hours after the game. It is a whole new world, Aladdin. Okay. A whole different deal. All right. I mean, but the thing is, right? And I'll use the Aladdin, the diamond in the rough of all of this is that if you get through the adjustment of that time, it works out. And it's different for everybody. I bring this up because Trevor Story, coming full circle here. Trevor Story is the biggest reason that the Sox are 10-4, not Alex Cora shaving. Okay. Trevor Story is the biggest reason that they're 10-4 because sometimes it takes that one big game that started, right? Sometimes it takes a moment to change things, a moment where everything becomes different and you feel like yourself. Oh, this is what I do. Like, it's okay. I'm at Fenway Park. Okay. Like, it's at a different stadium, but this is what I do. It's no different than anywhere else. That is something that a lot of players don't get when they go to these cities. Carl Crawford was an unbelievably talented player when he played. Unbelievably talented. Played for the Rays his whole career before he had gone to the Red Sox. He wasn't Carl Crawford. He wasn't CC. He was like half of 1C. I mean, not playing good in the field, not hitting. He wasn't himself at all. Now, some players admit this, some don't. And it's not on purpose. Like, it's not like these guys are trying. Like, Javier Vasquez didn't say, I want to stink. Carl Pavano or whoever you want to bring up, Kevin Brown after the contract, like whatever guys you're like, Bobby Bonilla, whoever fails in a big spot, right? Or when there's a lot of pressure on, a lot of times they don't know why it's happening, but they're not comfortable. And Trevor Story's gotten comfortable. He's not a loud, vociferous guy. He's gotten comfortable. And that is the story with the Red Sox. You could say shaving all you want, because what happens the next time you go 5-10? I mean, I think we all know that tongue in cheek, but I'm just saying. But it brings up again, it's comfort. It's why, Springer went back and got comfortable. Okay, now I can go and do this thing, right? We're good. Like, everybody needs in life or in sports that moment, and that's something to remember because, you could find the most talented and hardworking, conscientious person on earth. They're all going to have real world issues, real life problems, right? Like, players have problems. Guy maybe go 0 for 20, but maybe they have a situation where there's, heaven forbid, an illness with a child or something going on. Like, that pat on the back, that comfort level, that can stop you the rest of the season going that direction. But people often don't realize the difference that makes. I'll close with a story today. And again, another episode 3. And I'm curious of some of your thoughts on some of the coaching and the motivating and some of these things with superstitions. And for the players that are listening, is there a superstition that really has kind of been your favorite, if you're allowed to share it, a former player? Because if I share it, then it's over. But we've got episode 3 coming up. And one of my favorite people, who's a nut job, who is now retired, Todd Frazier, is going to join me on that. Dusty's coming up. I got some good guests. We're going to have a lot of things and a lot of fun. So keep out for the podcast. I'll keep letting you know, and I'll try and make it more kind of specifically what day it's going to be. It got odd with the holiday weekend. But I'll close you with a fun story about being comfortable and not being comfortable relating to myself, okay? I have always been comfortable speaking in front of people when I know what I'm talking about. I always would tell people this for years. People have public speaking issues in school, right? And I would say, like, they don't, how do I get in front of a class? And I always say to people, think about this, okay? If I asked you to go in front of anywhere, forget a class, right now, and talk about the Pythagorean theorem or Magellan, and I only say that because I had to do one of these or whatever, it's because you don't care about what you're talking about at all. If I ask you to go talk about why you love your sister, your son, your family, the Mets, whoever, it makes it easy for you. But for me, I got out of my element. It's anniversary of the 50 Cent first pitch. When I bounced the first pitch, the last time Will Myers was ever behind the plate ever in his life, and he never caught again, ever, and I still had the ball. I had not thrown any warm-up pitches, never thrown off a rubber, am not tall. Jeff Nelson, Nelly, former Yankee reliever, told me, dude, you really, if you didn't do warm-up pitches, told me right before I went downstairs in the press room, because I was panicking. They never got me any warm-ups, and they had promised. I'm not trying to get mad at the Royals staff, going back to Kaufman where it was. But he's like, aim high. He's like, please, he'd never thrown off a rubber. Now, I'm thinking aim high like at my level. I didn't realize what he meant, that if I aim at my level because of my height, it's going to dink down, which is what happened. It was highly embarrassing, but I'm going to be totally honest with you and transparent. When I walked out in the field, which it was crazy, it was a Sirius XM Futures game. It's the only reason that I was the person doing it. But their screen there at the K is huge. I never see my face that big. I looked up, I panicked, literally was like, if you would have given me a mic on the mound, I would have sang to you, for crying out loud. I don't care. I don't care what anyone thinks. But when I took the ball and they showed me and I waved, I'm telling you right now, if peeing your pants is cool, I'm Miles Davis. I don't think I literally did it, but I was in my mind, if that's a thing. If you're not comfortable, you're not going to succeed no matter what it is. Take that with you, people. I mean, who said I didn't ever teach you anything? Podcast episode number 3 of Unfiltered is coming. I want to hear you. Get at me at Casey Stern. Continue to Bleav, because you got to BLEAV.